Hello my friends and welcome. This is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's go straight to the front lines. We have the main changes in Avdiivka direction, so let's go to the place. Well, first of all, Ukraine has the successful counterattack near to Pervomaiske. Just recently, yesterday, Russia was able to advance in this place, but today Ukraine repelled Russian attack, so it was yesterday and it is today. Russians were pushed behind this small river. I was a bit concerned about it yesterday because Russians were able to cross this river and were fighting for this road. But now we understand that Ukraine keeps control over it. But sadly, Russia commenced one more attack on the northern part of Avdiivka. Let's go to this spot. It's the most tricky area, I would say. So it was yesterday and it is today. Unfortunately, they took this part of the territory. Why is it bad? Because this place is located very close to the factory and it has the connection line to Avdiivka. So Russia wants to cut this connection for Ukraine. And let's check the distance from their positions to this road. It's a little bit less than 2 kilometers, a little bit more than 1 mile, so very close. Let's check out the 3D map. So this is the point where they advance right now, and the terrain, I wouldn't say that it's too flat, but they advance on the lower ground, so still Ukraine has some sort of the advantage keeping those territories under control around this place. And here we have the road I was talking to you about. This particular one is a very vulnerable supply line for Ukraine. And the Russian army is already using some of the mortars and artillery to target the road. Plus, they may easily launch the FPV drone attacks on Ukrainian transport even from this place. And here's the update from the other source, Mykovsk 73. You may see the advancement of the Russian army. Again, they've took some of the private buildings under control and moving ahead. Unfortunately, Ukraine tries to stop Russian advancement by using artillery or even tanks in this place, in the factory. Well, it's not the huge advancement of the Russian army, but it is happening. They were not able to advance over here, that's why they try many of the other attack vectors. Before they failed with their attack in Stepova, so now they tried different vectors. Some news from the Marinki direction. As I showed you yesterday, Russia is trying to use their suicide armored vehicles, MTLBs. They put lots of the explosives inside and sending those vehicles across the minefield, causing the detonation and the chain reaction of those mines. That is basically how they clear the way for their forces. So we saw the MTLB kaboom, but just after it, Russia sent the attacking forces. Yes, the usual Russian attacking style. Then they sent some of the convoy. Here you can see 4 of the vehicles. I think tank in the front, armored vehicles and 1 more tank. The result is understandable. Their convoy was stopped. Infantry, which survived, left the vehicles and returned back on their own feet, and Russia continued to suffer severe losses in their useless attack attempts, even losing modern tanks. And Ukraine continued to use the FPV drones to target the Russian armored vehicles and even tanks quite successfully, so FPV rules during this modern day war. You may see it may target the vehicles even in the forest lying between those trees. This one is interesting. It's like a computer game, so tank got some of the damages, it stopped and continued to burn down and later on exploded. This is the other direction, the northern part of Ukraine near to Kupiansk. The Russian military bloggers say that those were the tanks of the Ukrainian army, but actually all of that was filmed on Ukrainian drone. It was already confirmed that those tanks were Russians. And as you see, we even have the video confirmation about the positions of the Russian and Ukrainian armies in the place, so it was the assault from the Russian side. Assault attempt, as usual. By the way, we have the video in much better quality about the Russian advancement in Sinkiivka village. It's on the northern part of Ukraine, also the Kupiansk region. Right here you may see the devastation of the Russian tanks and armored vehicles, but I've already showed this case to you. This video is a little bit better because it was filmed from the close perspective. Ukraine is now testing the new FPV drone, which is capable to carry 2 of the shells at once. The takeoff weight is 5.3 kilograms and the weight of both of the shells is 3.6. so I don't know how much is that in pound, but as you can see, it flies and is able to carry those boob shells, I would call them. Definitely this drone will cause more damages. Today Russia lost one more Sukhoi 34 fighter bomber. This type of the fighter dash bombers you may only find in Russian aviation. As it was reported by many of the sources, Russia lost it in Shagol airfield near to Chelyabinsk, Russian Federation. Basically, the airplane burned down. Yet there is no information of how it was possible, but Ukrainian side says that it was the special operation conducted by the special forces. The Ukrainian side even publishes this video. Here you can see the airplane, the fuselage, and I might say that probably it is the Sukhoi 34. You can see double landing gear. You may find it only on Sukhoi 34, and this is the silhouette of the airplane, and something is burning out there. Here you can see the double fin construction, and later on the fire became more severe. And yes, someone is really happy with this one. So probably, definitely, Ukrainian special forces or maybe some intelligence conducted this mission. But we don't see the result of the airplane burned down completely. But I think that the guy was just running out from the airfield because it was very dangerous for him to be out there. Well, hopefully Russia finally lost this airplane after all, because the fire is great out there. What about the Russian airfield security? Well, it's not that good as, for example, in the Western countries. They do not have the automatic systems usually to detect the movement. I remember that I also used to go to the Russian military airfield in Kacha, Crimea. That was the Russian military airfield for a long time, even before the war, because they rented it from Ukraine. It was the Russian military base in Crimea. And I was just curious about the airplane, so I went to the taxiways near to the hangars, to those caponiers, and there was no one around to tell me something. So I even rode my bicycle out there. Now it is more strict, obviously, they blocked many of the passages, but I think that it's not impossible to get to the Russian military airfield, especially over here in Chelyabinsk. You can see that it's kind of cold, there is the snow line, so who would just patrol this territory far behind the front lines, deep in the Russian territory? But they left a multi-million-dollar airplane out there. Alright, about the southern front lines, it seems like Ukraine was finally successful near to Verbovo or near to Robotyne. We do have the drone video confirmation and also the actual video confirmation how Ukraine was capable to imprison many of the Russian soldiers. Performing this counterattack, however, on this platform I am unable to show you those kind of the videos because those are against the YouTube policy. That is why I have the alternative resource on Telegram, which is less strict compared to this platform and allows me to publish more information for my audience. That's why I call you, my friends, to subscribe for my Telegram channel. I think I even put the QR code on the screen for you to find it. Or you may check the link in the video description just below. The Belgorod city of Russia is under fire again. Here you may see the huge kaboom on the parking spot near to the residential building. No one knows what kaboomed out there. About the Russian attacks on Ukrainian territory, well, recently Russia used lots of the ballistic missiles, and today we found out the information about those. It seems like North Korea supplied Russia with ballistic missiles, unfortunately. So those are the debris of the North Korean missiles that were found not far away from Kiev. The Ukrainian air defense shut down those on the way. This type of the ballistic missile is called KN-23, and it's the modern weaponry for the North Korea. They got it into their army in 2019. I would say kind of similar to the Russian Iskander. The problem here that it's very hard to intercept those missiles. And there are some of the rumors that Russia wants to get more ballistic missiles from Iran. They have similar type of those. As you can see, this war is not only about Russia and Ukraine. It's the war between autocracies and democracies. We may see that autocracies also might unite very fast, providing even more help, military supplies for the Russian Federation. Ukraine doesn't have those tools from our allies themselves that might fly for hundreds of the kilometers away. Well, we have the ATACMS, but just few of them, and the range is quite limited, as well as the devastation power of those missiles. So Ukraine is unable even to cut the Kerch Bridge supply. But the North Korean missiles may carry half-a-ton warhead and fly for 700 kilometers. That's a lot. John Kirby gave the briefing today in the White House about the military support of Ukraine. Well, the White House administration still thinks that Senate will support the New Deal for Ukraine, including the House of the Representatives. Also, there were a couple of the remarks about the future of this war. In the long-term perspective, they say that Ukraine will keep the sovereignty and will join the democratic world fully. I personally guess as the member state of the European Union. But there is no certainty from our allies where they want to support Ukrainian assault operations to get all of the ground back. My personal opinion that we'll have the support from our allies in the future, this year for sure, but this support will just allow Ukraine to fight on more or less current positions. I'm sure that there are the plans for Ukraine to get Crimea back, for example, and Russia also doesn't want to negotiate. Putin wants to get the territories which he wants, so at least the eastern and the southern part of Ukraine. But his main goal is to change Ukraine totally. He wants Ukraine to be his slave state as the Belarus today. But the White House administration today said that it's unreal scenario for Putin. Well, hopefully. They also say that there were no any signs of the huge corruption in Ukraine about the military support from the United States. Well, I personally know that there is corruption in Ukraine, but not about the military support. It touches the budget funds that taxpayers pay for Ukraine. The United States already landed many of the experts to check out the funds which were going for Ukraine, and all of them say that everything was okay with the funds from the United States and with the military support. Well, it is the good sign after all. Also, guys, judging all of that stuff, I expect that it's gonna be a very long war. Until Putin has the power, he is willing to continue it. And there's the high probability, higher than the sun will rise tomorrow morning, that Putin will extend his term this year for 6 more years during the March elections in the Russian Federation. But in the United States politics, everything is kind of uncertain. So this year is crucial for Ukraine, and not just for Ukraine, but for the other allies. Some kabooms were reported in Crimea today, as well as in the Russian Novorossiysk port. Russia said that they shut down all of the Ukrainian drones or cruise missiles, but clearly there is the photo, and here you may see on this video the ground explosion with some of the smoke coming from the ground itself. Yet there is no information of what exactly was targeted. It is getting harder to obtain that information from the Russian publics because everything is censored. The good thing that Germany continues to support Ukraine even more. Ukraine has obtained the new military package, including many of the modern armored vehicles, lots of the tracks and artillery shells. Awesome. Okay, Putin signed the document allowing everyone to obtain the Russian citizenship if he or she serves in the Russian army for some period of time. Before, Putin already signed many of the papers allowing the simplified procedure for Ukrainians, Moldovans, Kazakh and Belarus people to obtain the Russian citizenship. What is needed just the paper that you are willing to obtain the Russian passport. Mainly that's it. And now they want to expand the Russian piece elsewhere. So guys, the question is, would you like to have the Russian passport just fighting for the Russian army for some time? Well, unfortunately, there are some of the volunteers in the Russian army. Lots of them are from Nepal, Cuba, and Syria, and also from some of the pro-Russian African countries, and the North Korea, obviously. But there are also some of the international fighters fighting for Ukraine. For example, this is the South Korean volunteer, and he has also many of the friends. Even Kazakhstan is scared about the Russian peace expansion. That's why they start to block the Russian news channels, basically the Russian propaganda. To the other news, there were 118 attacks recorded on the United States forces bases in Iraq, Syria, or elsewhere in the Middle East. The information was tweeted by Liz Frieden, but she doesn't give the period in which those attacks happened. Oh, since October 17, 118 attacks. Now attacks on the United States military bases intensified. Yesterday, one more was reported in Iraq. The good news that the United States of America extended the contract with Qatar to maintain the military base in Qatar. It's the biggest military base in the Middle East. Many of the United States airplanes are based there. Well, not just the United States, there is also the British military base and Qatar military base. Guys, please don't forget to press the like to this channel. By doing so, you help me a lot. Also, if you want to support my job, you may check out some of the links in the video description just below. Special thanks for my Patreon supporters and the sponsors of my YouTube channel. Guys, thank you a lot. You're doing a fantastic job. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.